Have you ever thought of buying a franchise or currently own one or many? If so, this podcast is for you. Welcome to Franchise Euphoria, the podcast created and hosted by franchise attorney Josh Brown for the sole purpose of helping people find success through franchising.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Franchise Euphoria, the podcast to help people succeed in franchising. I'm really excited for this episode as we have Dan Miller here to talk about the importance of knowing who you are, what you are capable of, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and what your dreams are before you buy a franchise or other small business. Dan Miller is president of 48 Days LLC and specializes in creative thinking for increased personal and business success. He believes that meaningful work blends our natural skills and abilities, our unique personality traits, and our dreams and passions. More specifically, Dan is active in helping individuals redirect careers, evaluate new income sources, and achieve balanced living. Dan is the author of the widely acclaimed 48 Days to the Work You Love and No More Mondays. I could probably go on and on and on, but I will stop at this point and simply welcome him to the show. Hello, Dan, and welcome.
Well, thank you. Great to be with you today.
Well, I'd just like to say that I'm a huge fan of your podcast and your work. You know, your common sense approach, your relaxed style, and your valuable insight really has helped me on my own journey. And I'm just really elated to be speaking with you today.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. It's an honor and always humbling for me to be a little tiny part of people's journey toward their own success. I love hearing those stories.
Well, you know, before we dive deep into the interview, I mean, tell us a little bit about you. I mean, I know you were raised on a farm, but how did you end up writing books on finding the work you love and doing life coaching?
Well, that transition took a little time, Josh. That wasn't an overnight kind of change, but I did grow up on a farm, and very early on, I decided I was going to explore some options other than getting up at 5:30 in the morning in the middle of winter to milk cows in a cold barn and then throwing hay bales in the heat of summer. I thought, God, there's got to be other options. Well, fortunately, I got exposure to books as a way to broaden my horizons. I got a hold of the little audio recording, The Strangest Secret, that says you become what you think about. And I thought, wow, is there really hope for me as a poor farm kid to change the trajectory of my life? And discovered that in fact was true. Yes, I could do that by controlling what I allowed to go into my mind. So I became a reader and looked at people who were already performing at the level at which I wanted to perform, learned from them, and it's been a marvelous journey. But most people know me as an author, speaker, coach. You know, so they know about 48 Days to the Work You Love and other books that I've done. You know, I've created a ton of content, have a strong presence on the online world at this point, have a podcast, newsletter, blog, and all that. But here's the thing that most people don't know. My first book, 48 Days to the Work You Love, that really put me on the map, I was 58 years old when that book was published. So this is not something that I figured out when I was some green 22-year-old and just latched onto it. I did a whole lot of other things in my life's journey before I became an author. And I love those things. I mean, I've always done work that I love, but it's been a variety of things that then positioned me to, I think, maybe offer a unique perspective on how to find work that's meaningful, purposeful, and profitable.
Well, you know, that's fascinating, Dan, because I think, you know, all of us, right, as individuals are always striving to try to find work that we enjoy and live the lives that we want to live. And I'm kind of curious from your perspective, you know, what is the recipe for finding the work you love?
I think one of the reasons that I've had a significant amount of success as an author, speaker in this space is because I take kind of a counterintuitive approach. I mean, we're taught in college, you look at who's hiring, where the job opportunities are. You know, if you're looking for a job, you grab the local newspaper, get online, talk to your friends, hey, they're hiring down at the plant. That's the way we choose work, which is the thing we spend more time in than anything else. But it really is a very poor approach. What I just described, all those approaches, are a recipe for short-term success and long-term frustration. So the thing I recommend is 85% of the process comes from looking inward first. We don't care what the economy is. We don't care who's hiring. We don't care where the job opportunities are. Look inward. What is unique about you? What kind of unique skills and abilities do you have? What are your personality traits? What are your values, dreams, passions, as recurring things that keep coming up? The more you know about yourself, the more you can create a clear focus. Then and only then is it appropriate to do a job search, look at business opportunities, consider franchises, or put a resume together to look for a job. Only after you know that much about yourself. So 85% of the process to look inward, 15%, and frankly that's the easy part, is the application. That's the recipe. 85% looking inward, 15% the application. That's why I've been privileged to be a part of people, thousands of people, finding work that is meaningful. And that varies a lot. See, with that, we don't get some kind of cookie-cutter approach. Well, here's the best opportunities. It doesn't matter. I would rather help somebody be successful growing dandelions, if that's really what they're passionate about, than trying to talk them into being a computer programmer, because we know that's where the jobs are.
And it sounds to me, you're really speaking about a difference between finding just a job or an occupation versus finding your vocation, that thing that you were meant to do. Why do you think it is that so many people just end up working at jobs instead of finding those vocations, and then they end up staying? It seems like there's some fear in there, but what else is there?
Well, the status quo is a very, very strong magnet, and a lot of people are trapped in what I call comfortable misery. They know it stinks, but at least it's predictable, and it's just too much work to take this deep breath, draw a line in the sand, and decide what would be a better fit. It's amazing. Kids decide on a college major a lot of times with less forethought than the time they put in to decide where they're going to go on spring break. But yet they put their lives in a particular direction, thinking that there's no escape from that. Spend the rest of their lives doing something that was made. I talked to a kid one time who had a degree in criminal justice, and I said, "Oh, wow, that's cool. You must have really thought hard about choosing that." He said, "No." He said, "We were in this big room, first day of school as freshmen, and they started calling out, if you're going to go into accounting, follow this guy down the hall. If you're going to go into biology, boom." He said, "I closed my eyes, put my finger down on the paper, criminal justice." I said, "You've got to be kidding me."
Really?
But that happens a lot. People just take a quick, what looks like an easy Band-Aid solution. Gee, they offered me a job. I talked to a guy recently who was working at a bank, and I said, "How'd you end up there?" He says, "Well, I needed just a job to get by. I was really wanting to do a job search to figure this out, but my uncle worked down at the bank. They offered me a position, so I just took the job." I said, "Oh, how long ago was that?" 14 years.
Wow.
14 years he had spent at a job that he knew was just temporary. He had no heart for it at all, but golly, got used to the little paycheck he was getting, and 14 years went by in a blink of an eye.
Well, that really so resonates with me, and I'm sure a lot of the people who are listening, because, at least, speaking for myself, when I got out of law school, I started working in a legal career, doing work that I really wasn't passionate about, but what other people said, "Hey, Josh, you might be good at doing this, or you might be good at doing that." And what I realized over the course of the first few years of my practice was that I've got to take the time myself for both my work happiness and my life happiness to figure out what I find meaning in, what I find to be valuable, and what I see as the best thing for me to be doing, or what I'm positioned best to put myself in a position to achieve success. And I think there's just a lot of people out there that fall prey to the notion of, you go find this steady job that is quote unquote safe, right? I don't think there is a safe job out there anymore.
There sure isn't. Anybody who thinks that they have security is living in a fantasy world. There's no such thing. And a lot of people, that I hear from, especially this time of year, this is the time of year when companies are making corrections in their own businesses, and they're making changes that need to be made. And then people get the pink slip, and they think, You got to be kidding me. Boy, they shafted me, after 15 years, and they just cut me off. That's not unfair. What do you mean? That was a reasonable agreement. They agreed to pay you as long as they needed you. They don't need you anymore. They can let you go. You didn't have security. You were being interviewed every single day you went into work. And as soon as what they were paying you didn't equal the value that you were delivering, they don't need you anymore. You don't have equity in the company. You're not an owner. You were being paid. It was a reasonable trade-off. Now it's over. So look forward, not backward. Let's get on with your life.
Oh, yeah, that's such great advice. I know that, one of the things that you spend so much time speaking on is the entire picture, not just work. And, as you and I both know, a successful life has a broader theme than just work. So, how do you define a successful whole life and sort of speak to your greater philosophy on that?
I answered a question from a gentleman just yesterday that kind of lent itself to what you're talking about. He is in his third job, has hated every single one, sucking the life out of him. He's overweight, depressed, his marriage is falling apart, finalizing a divorce. And, how can you find work that is really meaningful? Well, my response is, work is one small part of the picture that you paint. This is a life that's out of control. And a life includes much more than what we do work-wise. Now, that may sound strange coming from me. I spend my life helping people find work that's meaningful, fulfilling, profitable, all those things that I talk about. But even so, I recognize work is simply one tool for a successful life. Work should not identify us. Now, what that means is if we lose our work by our own choosing or through circumstances, it shouldn't change who I am. I should be the same person. I should be the same husband, same daddy, same neighbor, same community member, whatever. So what that means is that I better be making deposits of success in those other areas, socially, in my family, in the relationships that are important. Physically, I need to keep myself sharp and creative and alert. Personal development, what am I doing to develop as a person? Those are all areas that need attention just as much as work. Work is just one tool for a successful life.
And, so many people just don't know, though, where to start, where to find their purpose and how to use that purpose through their work and transform it over to their life. What are some simple steps that you recommend to get the ball rolling?
Well, this can be kind of a chicken and the egg thing because people, my most recent book is titled Wisdom Meets Passion. And people say, well, I don't know what I'm passionate about. And the assumption is that I'm just going to go out here and sit on a stump somewhere and wait for that bolt of lightning to let me know what I'm passionate about. That's really not the way that we discover our passion. And when I talk about discovering our passion, perhaps it's a misnomer because in many ways, passion is developed more than it is discovered. So you may not be able to put your finger on, this is what really puts me in the zone. But as you do something, and you can try different things, but as you do something and get some success, some affirmation, some financial rewards from that, all of a sudden you realize, wow, I really am passionate about this. And you develop passion by being excellent at something. But a lot of people are waiting to get in the game. They're on the sidelines, waiting to discover their passion, their purpose, their calling. Get in the game. That's why, especially with young people, Josh, and you can appreciate this, I have parents call me, golly, my son just graduated from college, 22. My daughter, is 18, doesn't know what she wants to do. Will you help him? Yeah. Have them call me in 10 years. Those first few years need to be part of the clarifying process. I cringe when we force kids to make a decision that's going to define their career for the rest of their life, when they're 18 years old. Are you serious? Give them some space to try some different things, to travel. There's not much I would consider a mistake at that point. You can be a greeter at Walmart. It'll help in the clarifying process. As time goes by, one of the things that I really did personally was follow some of the writings of Carl Jung, contemporary of Sigmund Freud, German psychoanalyst, and he said, even like me as a coach, he says you can't come out of school having read books and studied as a competent therapist. You need some life experience. So in my own life, I really followed that. I did a variety of things work-wise up until I was about 45 years old. At that point, there were some things that converged in a really interesting pattern, and it positioned me perfectly as a business executive and life coach. And I jumped in it full force, and it's been amazingly rewarding. But I wouldn't have been effective as a coach if I had just studied some books and decided I wanted to do that. I could not have been an effective coach at 25 years old or even at 35. So sometimes we get too impatient at finding the one right thing. This is a journey. This is an unfolding process, and it's healthy at any given time to take a fresh look at who am I, what am I prepared to do at this point in my life. That changes. We used to put a lot of value on loyalty. Wow, you look at a resume, golly, this guy's been here for 23 years. How cool is that? No, not today. That 23 years at one place may be looked at with a real raised eyebrow. I mean, I worked with a gentleman not too long ago. He was chief financial officer. His base pay was $325,000, and the company finally decided, hey, we can get somebody to do his work and pay him a whole lot less, and they let him go. 23 years.
Wow.
CFO of a major company. I thought, wow, this guy's going to really be a great candidate. He's on top of what's happening out there, the changes in the economy, workplace, and all of that. We'll just slide him right into a new position, no problem. No. His description to me was, Dan, 23 years, I've had my head down, my pencil up. He was so out of touch with the way things have changed in the workplace. He was a horrible candidate. He wasn't even a good candidate to get another job, let alone to do something more creative.
Wow. I mean, I just love everything you just said. You touched on so many key things. I mean, it reminds me of a great quote, and I think it was Steve Jobs who always says, the journey is the reward. So many people look for that quick fix, look for that, hey, how do I get to that end point? And you have to sort of take the necessary steps. I mean, I relate it to myself, Dan, when law school is great for teaching theory, but it doesn't teach you practical application. And, and I felt you were talking about the 18-year-olds that don't know what they want to do and they feel this pressure. And so when I went to law school, I had actually worked for 5 years in the business world and then went as a non-traditional student. And when I started, I kind of felt bad about that. I kind of felt like, wow, I've kind of missed some years. But then as I went through, and surely when I graduated, I was ahead of a lot of people because I actually had life experience. I actually had experience that I could draw upon that actually led me into the area that I'm in today. So I completely resonate with all of that. I think you also touched upon the passion aspect, and it reminded me of Jim Collins and his hedgehog concept, where basically, you got to take that passion and then you got to figure out, okay, can I be at the best in the world at this? And then what's the economic driver that's going to make all that happen? And I think sometimes people in the angst to try to get somewhere fast, they just focus on the passion, but they don't look at the full picture.
And the other thing, and what you just said, Josh, is they focus on just the learning without the application. I mean, I had a podcast question for my podcast this week where a gal said, would it ever be wise to start a business even while you're in graduate school? And my response was, I can't imagine being in graduate school and not having a business going. I mean, we think that learning is a separate kind of process where we're going to cram all the learning into this 4-year period or 3 years for a graduate degree or whatever, and then we're going to stop, and now we're going to go to the application. I mean, that's like you and I sitting down on January 1st, and we're going to sit down at this amazing buffet, and we say, we're going to eat as much as we possibly can, and then we're not going to have to waste time eating for the rest of the year. Well, that's ludicrous. We don't do that. I don't know why we do that with learning. Why would we think that we can just cram learning into one confined short period of time, and then application is something different? This is an ongoing process. We learn as we go, and if we're not continual learners, I guarantee you, we're falling behind our peers every day.
Well, the statistics bear that out, just what you said, and the educational model is certainly changing to bear that out, to give people more practical day-to-day experiences so that when they do get in the workforce, they actually have some applicable skills. So that's really great information. And Dan, as you know, my audience is made up of individuals, some of which are stuck in a job, as we've talked about, that they don't like, that they have no passion for. And they're searching for a way to a career that uniquely fits them. Others have been recently fired, laid off, or quit to pursue work that gives them more meaning. A goal of my podcast is to help people in these types of situations determine if they are a good fit for franchise ownership so that they can start fresh and start right. And, a foundational piece in doing so requires looking at the approach that they are taking. Can you speak to the person who is in that bureaucracy and is sort of just dying to get out and start their own business? I mean, what are the keys to becoming your own boss?
Well, that's a great question, Josh. And when we look at the work possibilities, the iterations of what work can be today are almost endless. So we can go from being a traditional employee where we check in at 7:30, out at 4:30, hour for lunch, 2 weeks vacation, medical benefits, to the 22-year-old who is this entrepreneur who has some site online where he makes a couple $100,000 a year. It's not one or the other. There's so many things in between. And the key is to find a right fit. This is not good or bad, right or wrong as a cookie cutter plan. It's what fits you. Now, sometimes people assume that in listening to me, I recommend everybody become an entrepreneur. Just do something creative and non-traditional. That is not true at all. There are a lot of people I recommend that they get or continue in a traditional job. So the time spent looking at yourself is extremely important. Now, what you're talking about and what you help people look at is franchising, which I love as a model because it's kind of a halfway point in some ways. It's not just wipe the slate clean, hey, think something up and hope it works. No, you have a proven prototype, a proven plan. And as you know, the mantra for franchising, you're in business for yourself but not by yourself. You have people around you to help you with systems, inventory control, hiring, marketing plans, and all of that. So the question is it a right fit? And you ought to be able to do personality inventories on yourself, get the input of other people, aptitude kind of profiling so that you see, okay, does this model fit? But by all means, get somebody to advise you on that. I hear the back end of so many horror stories. A physician who decides, with all the changes in healthcare, I'm going to get out of this. Here's somebody told me about a successful franchise, so he gets a transmission franchise, and 6 months later we realize he doesn't know how to release a hood in a car.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
I've seen situations that ludicrous where somebody jumped into a new business model, no way in the world did it fit them. They simply looked at the profitability that is on average true for people who are franchisees, but it's not going to be true for them because this is not a fit. So look at yourself. That 85% looking inward will help you define what kind of a business model fits me.
Some people just aren't cut out for it, right? Some people are so entrepreneurial that they should never buy a franchise because they always want to reinvent things. They always want to change the rules. They always want to pivot. And so I always tell people, I always try to look, and if people ask me, try to figure out, are they the type of person? Because when you get into a franchise, you are buying into somebody else's business model. And there are a lot of people who do that and end up very unhappy because they should have just done it themselves.
I am so happy that you were the one that laid that out. I'm a little hesitant to go there because, you help people find franchise, but for you to lay that out, that is such an overlooked thing. Because a lot of people think, I'm tired of being vulnerable in the corporate world. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to do my own thing. And they assume that getting a franchise is that total Wild West. I'm going to be in charge of my own time, open-ended income, all those things. No, franchising is a business model. A lot of times people who wanted to move into something really entrepreneurial realized they really purchased a pretty tight job for themselves by doing this. When you get a Subway franchise, you better be prepared to be there 60 to 70 hours a week the first couple of years. And you're going to have all those details of, hiring, screening, managing inventory, all those kind of things. Yeah, franchising is not for the truly entrepreneurial. It's a wonderful blend. It's just like in publishing. Right now, we've got a lot of hybrid publishers showing up. So it's that in-between spot. It's not just out there doing it all on your own, self-publishing, and it's not traditional publishing, but it's where somebody says, here's a proven model. We're going to help you with this, but this is the way it works. If you do this, this is what you can expect. Very legitimate in both senses.
Oh, yeah. And, one other thing that, a lot of people neglect to think about is, and I'll use the example that you gave with the doctor, was that, when you sign a franchise agreement, Dan, you're locked in. You're locked in for 5, 10, 15, sometimes 20 years. There are actually 20-year agreements out there. So my advice to people is always, if you're on the fence, you might want to give it a go yourself, because at least if you fail, you're out of it and you can fail quickly. Whereas if you actually buy a franchise, you never get those fees back, and you can be locked into a 5, 10-year agreement. And now you're put in the position where not only you're not going to get your initial fees back, but now you got to sell the thing, and you're going to take a loss on that. So these things after the fact, after you've been through it, they seem like common sense, but to so many people, they just don't take the time to plan. They just do not take the time to plan for it. And I know that you're really big on life plans. And I'm curious how you recommend somebody go forward to create a life plan, and what should be included in that.
Yeah, great question. This is certainly a great time of year to be looking at that too, where you are just as strategic about success in other life areas in addition to work. Most people, when they talk about even goals, they think, well, gee, I want to, get a promotion and I want to make $20,000 more next year. Well, that's just a couple areas. That's not a life plan. That's just one particular area. I want to know, what are you going to do in your important relationships? If you're married, how are you going to continue and maximize success in your marriage relationship? What are you going to do personally? If you want to learn a new language this year, how are you going to do that? How much time are you going to spend? What days are you going to spend? What do you want to accomplish physically? It's taking all of those areas and being just as strategic as if we were going to open a hardware store down the street. What are you going to do in that area? So I want to see, how are you going to strategically be successful, make those massive deposits of success in the areas to achieve the kind of life that you say you want to live.
Well, and so after they've gone through, and after somebody's gone through and created that life plan, and let's say, it's somebody who's in a job that they don't like. When do you think the time is right for somebody to quit a job that they hate?
If somebody's in a job that they hate, the time ought to be really quick to get out. I can't imagine. I'm very impatient, very intolerant for things that are not enjoyable. I can't imagine spending 2 weeks in a job that I really, truly hated. Now, I'm not recommending that somebody make a transition that quickly, but that's why I use the 48 days as the timeline, because I do believe 48 days is enough time to assess where I am, get the advice and opinion of other competent people, look at the options, do a little bit more research, choose the best one, and act. What I really don't have patience for is somebody saying, man, I hate this job. Gee, how long have you been there? Well, 12 years and 11 months. I've hated every month. Are you serious? Why would you stay that long? Create a plan of action and move out of it. Again, knowing that work is simply one tool, it still requires a significant amount of time and emotional energy. Don't continue with something that's sucking you dry, that's making you a poorer person in terms of your emotional personality. Don't do that. So you got to have a timeline with it, and I think 48 days is adequate time to do that.
And I think, too, that, fear of failure is what holds so many people back. It held me back for a couple years before I decided to launch out on my own. And, I end up speaking with a lot of younger attorneys and younger professionals, 2-3 times a month, where they'll reach out and they want to launch out on their own. But there's that fear of failure. How do you get over that? Or I guess maybe a better question is, do you ever get over the fear of failure?
I don't think you ever do. I think it would be arrogant, egotistical, and short-sighted to ever get over it. Be that as it may, look at the alternatives. Do you want to stay in something that we would call comfortable misery just because it's predictable? No, I would rather take the risk of something unknown with the possibility of a much bigger payoff in terms of satisfaction and probably financial rewards as well. Fear comes, it's like risk. We use that term improperly a lot of times. Risk implies having no control. So if I go to Las Vegas and I put the deed to my house down on a roll of the dice, that's risky because I have no control over the outcome. That's not what we do in business. If we look at what the options are, go through the process I just mentioned, get the advice and opinion of other people, do a little bit more research, we choose, create a plan of action and act, that's not risky. I mean, that's what real serious entrepreneurs and business people who are moving into like franchises do. They study, they research, they create a plan, they walk right out on that. To me, that's less risky than going to work tomorrow morning and hoping you get a paycheck on Friday.
Yeah, I love that. And Dan, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule and providing such great content to my listeners. And I really do truly appreciate it. And before we part, though, please tell everybody where they can get a hold of you and tell us what kind of exciting things you've got going on for 2014.
Wow. I don't know when I've ever been as excited about starting a new year as I am now because of the new projects we've got coming up. And, frankly, some of these involve things that I couldn't have even described 2 and 3 years ago. I mean, that's how rapidly opportunities are changing. I mean, we're doing some online training, which is a really explosive area. We're getting ready to launch a new 48 Days Mastermind that I think I've been preparing my whole life for. I'm totally jazzed about that. A couple of places to kind of track what we're doing. One is 48days.com, massive amounts of information there, articles about everything that we've been talking about. And then we have 48days.net. That's a community that we created a couple years ago that's just kind of an umbrella for people who really are committed to turning their dreams into reality. And what has been amazing to me to watch, Josh, is how willingly people share their ideas, their expertise, and resources. So I can just kind of stand back, but the interactions there have been amazing as all people are being elevated to success. It's kind of that old adage, rising tide raises all ships, and we've certainly seen that play out there. That's at 48days.net. I have a lot of opportunities to do interviews, to speak, and things. A couple things coming up. One is New Media Expo in Las Vegas, be there doing a presentation, and then in April, in San Diego at Social Media Marketing, and going to be doing a panel with a buddy of ours, John Dumas from Entrepreneur on Fire.
Oh, yeah.
So I get out a lot to these conferences. I've been a seminar and conference junkie for years and years and years. I love the interaction with people, opportunity to connect with people, kind of link arms together. So, yeah, I'll be out at a lot of these conferences coming up in 2014.
So it's safe to say you are not going to have a dull 2014.
No, I'm not. I am saying no to probably 85% of the things I'm being asked to do for 2014 because I simply can't fit them into my schedule. I've got some book deadlines, so I've got my major projects laid out, so I know time is already committed to those, but it's exciting to have new opportunities just showing up every day.
Well, Dan, thanks again, and I so look forward to following your continued success, and thank you again.
Well, thanks. It's been a delight being your guest today. I hope that our conversation will help clear some cobwebs and inspire your audience as well, Josh.
I have no doubt that it will, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Thanks.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.